Hey there! In this video, I'm going to explain the differences between RAW and JPEG formats. What are the pros and cons of each? And at the end, you will see which one suits your workflow better. Okay, let's get into it. We all know what a JPEG photo is, right? It is a compressed image format that you've probably seen everywhere. It's a smaller, quicker, and processed in camera, so it's ready to use straight out of the camera. RAW, on the other hand, is, well, raw. It's essentially unprocessed data straight from your camera's sensor. Think of it as the digital equivalent of a film negative. You might be too young for this, but before digital photography became a thing, there were rolls of light-sensitive films that were loaded into an analog camera, and while shooting, the light hits the film more like the way it hits the digital sensor nowadays. Then the photographer takes the film into a darkroom and use certain chemicals to develop it into an actual image. This RAW file that we are talking about is equivalent of that film negative. You need to develop it using software like Lightroom or Photoshop. The first thing you will notice when you see a RAW file is its unusual file format, which depends on the camera brand that you are shooting with. For example, if you are shooting RAW on a Nikon camera, the file format will be NEF, which stands for Nikon Electronic File. Or if you're using a Canon camera, the RAW file will have a CR2 or CR3 extension. When you import your RAW images from the camera into the Lightroom, it will be converted to a DNG file, which is yet another RAW format developed by Adobe. As you see, there are different RAW formats out there, so don't get confused when you see one. Since the RAW images are uncompressed with maximum amount of data stored in them, they have much larger file size. All the data captured by the sensor will be stored in the file with no adjustments. JPEGs, on the other hand, are compressed files. Most of the data that can't be seen will be discarded, and in the process, camera will add a bit of contrast and sharpness, leading to a much smaller file size and a nicer look overall. That is why RAW images look dull and washed out when compared them to their JPEG twins. Larger file size on RAW images pose some limitations on your workflow that we need to be aware of. First is the issue of storage. If we are concerned about storage, we might want to shoot in JPEG, sacrificing the versatility of having RAW images. Or sometimes when we shoot at high speed, like sport photography, the camera's ability in writing the RAW images into the memory card might not be able to keep up with the speed at which you're shooting with. For example, you might want to shoot RAW at 8 frames per second, but since the file sizes are high, the memory card writing speed will limit the speed, causing the camera to stutter and shoot at lower than your desired speed. Okay, now that we know that RAW files are larger in size, uglier in the first look, have unusual file format that need another software like Photoshop or Lightroom to develop, which take time and energy. But here's the catch. If you are a professional photographer, every little bit of detail in your image is priceless. Shooting in RAW will enable you to preserve every bit of the data in the image. You will be able to recover details from shadows and highlight areas in post-processing, the details that simply get discarded in a JPEG image. As a professional photographer, you want to set contrast and sharpness manually in post-processing instead of letting camera set them for you in predefined presets. Aside from recovering detail from shadow and highlights in the image, another huge benefit of shooting in RAW is the ability to change the white balance. Changing white balance of a RAW image in post-processing is like setting it on camera during shoot session. So when you are shooting RAW, you just need to set the white balance on auto. Later, in post-processing, you can easily change the white balance to your desired amount as if you have changed it on camera while shooting. In JPEGs, however, since lots of color data has been discarded, changing white balance is like applying a filter on top of the image. And if the white balance is way off on the original JPEG image, it will create unnatural color shifting when you try to correct that. In Lightroom, when you are working on a RAW file, the white balance slider has the actual color temperature values that you can set like you would on your camera. While in JPEG files, the slider is set on 0 by default, and you can basically make the image more yellow or blue by moving the slider to right or left. So as you can see, RAW images provide us with a much higher amount of flexibility and versatility when it comes to post-processing. Professional photographers shoot in RAW all the time. And if you are serious about your photography, you might want to shoot in RAW too. But again, there are always situations in which JPEG format might be a better choice. If you are concerned about storage, like you are low on memory card, you just want an easy, accessible photo without the hassle of post-processing, you might want to shoot JPEG. In this scenario, you should make sure you set the white balance correctly and the exposure is right, so you won't miss much data from shadow and highlight areas. DSLR cameras also give you the option to have both JPEG and RAW files at the same time, which is real handy. What do you think? Do you shoot in RAW all the time, or you prefer JPEGs? Please leave a comment down below and share your opinion with us. I hope this video was helpful, and see you in the next one.